AAA gaming is collapsing fast and hard. Exactly like my love life, but thankfully there's Squid Game Season 2, so we can push that aside for a moment. But everyone expected this. One of the greatest statistics to prove it is the fact that roughly only 25% of Steam users actually have bought a 2024 release game, which is wild. In any case, I like that. Trash to trash, piss to piss, shit to shit. That's the AAA gaming motto nowadays.
Today, and AAA gaming has found itself in a really bad spot entering 2025. I really want to talk about this because most times I feel this subject matter is talked about. It's in a light of gaming's bad nowadays. It'll never be as good as the good old days. And as someone who runs a retro channel, I feel I am best fit to have that sort of conversation. But that's not the angle I'm tackling today. It is a story of hope at the end of all of it. But to get to that light at the end of the tunnel, we got to go through some darkness first, right? And 2024, I think, was a dark year for the games industry, whether it be the layoffs or the studio closures. But really, for me, it is also...
Oh no, the layoffs. Talentless woke loser activists got laid off. Oh no, the tragedy, the horror. How will the gaming... Oh, wait, what? That's healing? That's called healing? Well, I'll be damned, boys. That's a good thing, turns out. Wow.
The absolute nosedive in AAA games quality from teams that should be providing the best-in-class experiences this industry has to offer. You look as recently as 2023, and of course we have games that speak for themselves in Baldur's Gate 3. I don't need to say much more than that. But the worst of the worst in 2023, to me, were games that were IP tie-ins like The Walking Dead Destinies, Lord of the Rings Gollum. You had games like that which had low budget written all...
Low-key, Lord of the Rings Gollum at least was funny how bad it was, but other things like Dragon Age, Veilguard, Starfield, and many more examples were just depressing.
Over them, and blatantly were cash grabs. You had Skull Island, Rise of Kong is another example. Just woefully under-budgeted jokes of a game. But the key being that these were not arriving from developers like BioWare, Bethesda, Rocksteady, some of our best-in-class game developers that have given us some of our most memorable experiences in the years prior, right? We're talking about, for example, in 2023, Game Mill Entertainment, who made 2 of the 3 worst games of the year, in my humble opinion. 2024 felt like the year for like my sports fans out there where you have that favorite player you watch take the field season in, season out, and they're so good they seem timeless. Age can never catch up to them. And
this is such a bad argument. The fact that a gaming studio previously 20 years ago made something good doesn't mean that you're supposed to love it forever, okay? There is no difference between Kong Skull Island. By the way, that game was literally made by a studio that somehow magically is really good at acquiring rare IPs and then just making cheap cash-ins. That game was never supposed to be good. It was just supposed to be a cheap cash-in. And yet it's at the same quality level as, again, Dragon Age, Railguard, Starfield, Unknown 9, Dustborn, and all of these things. But putting it in the same pot, it doesn't matter if a studio used to be good, because the reality is it's no longer good. And I am tired of giving the benefit of a doubt to these companies that are no longer even trying to be good, that are pushing political messaging, pandering, and other types of virtue signal BS. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. BioWare can go to hell and die. Mass Effect 5 is most likely not happening because there's no way they have money left. Their last 3 games were an absolute disaster field that did not recoup even 20% of their budgets. In some cases, less even, as much as I understand. And yeah, Mass Effect 5 is not happening because they're going to run out of money. No one's going to put in the cash, and there it is, it's dead. BioWare is going to be sold for parts next year because there's no way they can keep on living. They already have amassed roughly a 1.2 billion loss, most likely this year alone, which is staggeringly high. BioWare has probably a 1 billion loss, but that's over the course of like 4 years, which is manageable almost. But still, why would I give the benefit of the doubt to these companies? Why? All the good devs are gone. CDPR Red is about to become a shithole. It's just, I don't care about the studios that make games. I just care about the game being good. I don't literally care anything about the studio. A studio name attached to a thing is pretty much just exclusively a red flag at this point. Unless it's Hooded Horse. All of their games have been pretty good in my opinion. I've played a lot of them. Really good stuff on average.
And then 1 year, it just happens. And they're just not the same player. And I feel like we saw a lot of that this year. So I want to recount that tale, assess the industry on a deep level, and then talk about where we're heading and why there is still a lot to be excited for, and that many of those same developers that you love are still there making games, just in different places. I'm going to point you to a couple in this video. So let's begin, ladies.
If he points the Exodus, I will literally freak out.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start off with looking at Warner Bros. Games. They represent, I think, the biggest plummet in 2024, whether it be multiverses, which they say is one of the reasons its games division is substantially underperforming, where they note here that the results were impacted by games, which they took another $100+ million impairment due to underperforming releases, primarily multiverses, bringing down their total year-to-date to over $300 million in their games business, defining it as the key factor in this year's studio's profit decline. And you only have to reach a few months earlier into the year to find Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which speaks for itself in the terms of its failure. But how big was that failure? As reported by Bloomberg, this was a $200 million loss. A loss so big, it was described as being a larger budget than the movie that came before it. You look at some...
Wasn't this now, because every time you're talking about something this big, something from a studio that hasn't done anything in years, and you're telling me 200 million, I'm instantaneously getting suspicious because typically, after a year it's 250 million, turns out the loss was. After 2 years, turns out it's 300, and then it's 350 million or 400 million. A game studio that has not developed anything in a long time and then comes out and, does this? There's no way this is 200 million. This needs to be like 300 million or something like that. From the licensing, from the everything. 300 mil minimum.
Something like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and it perfectly resembles what has gone wrong with AAA gaming, is that Rocksteady originally was known for making authentic superhero experiences, the most empowering superhero experiences that you could find in the video game market. I still think that Arkham City is the best superhero game you can play to this day. But they made, I think, gems like Batman Arkham Knight, which people didn't appreciate until Suicide Squad, or of course Arkham Asylum, that really got things going. Now, much of that talent that made those games has since left Rocksteady. But the problem with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was the lack of gameplay-focused personality building. For example, when you play as Batman, this dude's crushing all bones in sight, and he feels like a badass, just how Batman should. To put a gun in everyone's hands, to tell them to go chase down their favorite color of loot, and to make a repeatable storyline out of a Suicide Squad game is such a blatantly missed opportunity. And it's assuming the worst of the consumer, because it's assuming that people are dumb enough to buy this sort of stuff. How dumb? They're selling their $100 deluxe edition for $5 at one point in time. It is sold that poorly, and their post-launch support has been tone deaf. One of the issues people had was with the story of Suicide Squad, and they've introduced characters like one of the worst renditions of the Joker and Mrs. Freeze. It is a far cry away from the
Trans Freeze, by the way.
Same developer that provided us the Arkham.
Also, watching this video is hilarious because Matty is one of those people that we call professionally a shill. Now, he's trying a little bit, I would personally say now, to not be that much of a shill, but all shills try to not be shills, because being a shill is pretty detrimental to your career, honestly, on YouTube on average. Everyone at some point figures out that you're just a shill without any original thoughts and nothing. This is why I'm proud of myself, because time to time I'm gonna make a video where I make a hot take, and I literally feel nothing bad about it, but people disagree with me, and that's how I know I'm on the right path. Because if you're constantly saying everything that people agree with constantly, you're either pretending or something miracle is happening. So the fact that I time to time will say something that I like but other people dislike, and by the way, most of the time the conversations in the comments are civil. People just point out, I don't like this too much or whatever. I like that. You boys absolutely rock for that. But, you know, this in the industry is called shilling, okay? And Mr. Matty literally is one of those people who do not think that woke is real. They will never even mention the word woke. So it's kind of funny. It's almost like the Act Man when he's saying, "Oh my God, oh, look at this game." I don't remember Dragon Age Veilguard. Oh, Dragon Age Veilguard is bad because of all these things that literally anyone would normally call woke. But he's like, no, that woke is not real. And then they need to tiptoe about the idea that woke is not real and not mention the word, even though everything they are describing is a 1-for-1 woke thing. 10 out of 10.
Games. And again, it feels like I'm watching that favorite player take the field. Again, I blindly went into Suicide Squad like there's no way they're going to deliver anything below a 7, and they completely missed the mark in my opinion.
I mean, did you look at the trailer? I did. I didn't make a video about the trailer. I actually did, but then I deleted it because I was afraid that they're gonna actually strike me or something like that. Because they do that. They have a history of doing this shit.
This is not even getting into the gameplay woes, the massive amount of UI on screen. But it wasn't just Rocksteady, right? This was the top of the year we're talking about, ignoring multiverses, which was another bad decision of apparently releasing a game, then claiming it was a beta when the game wasn't drawing a lot of players, taking it off the market for a year, and then resubmitting it into the most competitive genre in gaming and live service and thinking it was going to do well. Like, whoever's calling the shots at WB Games is doing an awful job, because that was just doing the game for complete failure at that point in time. Smash Bros. Finally had...
That's a stupid point, okay? Turning Batman into a live service game is not what people expect, but that does not mean that it's gonna fail because of it. No, most things that people like are live services, by the way. World of Warcraft, let's not get in the nitty-gritty about that. You probably know my opinion on World of Warcraft and whatnot. But, you know, things like World of Warcraft, things like Lost Ark, a lot of things that we play on average every day is a live service. So turning Batman, something that has been typically associated with almost uniquely associated with a single-player experience, and turning into a live service, unexpected, not what people would necessarily instantaneously want, but does not mean it's instantaneously going to fail. Suicide Squad failed just because it's a literal atrocious game. It does nothing right. Pick a game mechanic out of it, and it's probably done poorly. I can't even think of a single Suicide Squad killed Justice League mechanic that I don't think is not done poorly. Literally, shooting, loot, missions, movement, style, everything is just bad. And that's why the game failed.
Got a competitor, right? It finally got a competitor, and they decided to rip it from the market and put it back on a year later and make it a worse game at that time. But like I said, it wasn't just WB. It was other Titans. Titans that many lost faith in after a certain game that came before this game. But for me, and many others, the straw that broke the camel's back was Starfield Shattered Space. This is a game that if you go on Steam right now, it's rated at a mostly negative with over 3,000 reviews.
Dude, Maddie, you need to pick like a good music soundtrack for... I thought that something's happening, an earthquake or something. What the hell?
And it also didn't review favorably with critics, with a 61 average on OpenCritic. And that has since plummeted Starfield's player count on Steam specifically to just around 5,000.
Fun fact, I actually looked at Shattered Space when it launched. Didn't play it because like hell I'm gonna actually give Bethesda my money at this point. I regret that I couldn't do the a refund for Starfield when I bought it in the first place. But Shattered Space is a unique level disaster. When Shattered Space launched, Steam, roughly from 5k average daily players, it went to 12. That is less than a 6% retention for an expansion that most people got for free, by the way. That is uniquely bad. That alone signals that Starfield is a unique level of disaster. Arguably, 6% retention rate for an expansion is probably one of the worst retainment rates in, well, all of the last 10 years. Suicide Squad has a better retention rate for players coming back and playing when they release a new season. But 6% is... 25 is low. 6% is more than 4 times lower than the actual number that is typically considered low.
1,000 players, which is an all-time worst for the game, might I add. Many people were hoping that Starfield Shattered Space, based on what Todd Howard had told people about the expansion, would resemble sort of the Phantom Liberty moment for Starfield. Although I think Starfield was much more respectable at launch than people give it credit for, many folks were looking for that tried and true Bethesda Game Studios exploration. And you could find it in Shattered Space, but what you found was a remarkably low quality bar that Starfield failed to pass. And it was a heartbreaker. How could this once great RPG giant that gave us the games like Fallout 3, Oblivion, Morrowind, Skyrim, even Fallout 4, release something like this? It's a trend that would carry into a game for many, like Dragon Age the Veilguard, although in fairness, at the time of recording this video, that didn't seem to really affect its sales. Over in the UK, the sales look solid, softer across the rest of Europe, but still solid. Meanwhile, on Steam, it pulled a pretty decent player count of almost 90,000 players. Not nearly the level of Baldur's Gate 3, but I think people are confusing a viral game with a competent game. And even on Steam, those reviews have been good. 23,000 plus reviews and mostly...
Dragon Age Veilguard was a disaster. It's not even amongst the top 50 most selling games. It has not sold even 1.1 million copies at this point. Well, maybe it has 1.1, but it's not... Their lifetime expectancy for this game is currently 3 million lifetime sales, which I doubt that they will get. My original prediction was I doubt that they're going to get 1.5 million sales. They're going to struggle to get 1 million. And I was right on the money. Like always, boys. We're good at this shit. Okay? Black Swan event, 4 million sales. And that's never happening, obviously. That's why we call it a Black Swan event. And Dragon Age is a series that typically sells roughly minimum 7 to 12 million copies over a lifetime span. And now they're not even going to get 3, and this game most likely costed starting from 200 to 400 million. This is a disaster. These likes, these positive reviews don't mean shit.
Positive is not something I personally expected after playing Dragon Age the Veilguard. Still, I don't want to speak for everyone and only myself. This is a game I do look at and think, for BioWare, this is a storied studio that could definitely produce much better. And that was the tale of the tape for many of the games I just spoke about. And that's because gaming as a whole and how it's distributed is changing dramatically, right? It's not just reaching new audiences when it comes to games on a AAA level, it's even the platform holders. You look at what Xbox is doing right now, where they recently stated that there would be no red lines for what games could come to PlayStation or Nintendo hardware. That is a huge change that we saw in 2024 compared to...
I love this. We talked about this. This is that genius marketing. This is why I always say everyone at marketing is just brain damaged. Look at this. Black girl with dreads at a coffee shop while eating sushi. There's sushi somewhere here. And a cake. She's playing her handheld shit. What great marketing. What? Man, you gotta get those black women gamers that eat sushi. Yeah, good luck.
Previously, which was a lot of gated communities. You get your Xbox exclusives, you get your Switch exclusives.
To be fair, it could have been worse. That could have been a trans woman.
You get your PlayStation exclusives, and they all fight for your time and attention. But Xbox has completely thrown the towel on all of that and have decided to go scorched earth. You can get your games anywhere because everything is an Xbox, as indicated by that one.
We talked about this. This is an unprecedentedly insane business move, which means that their current direction as trying to actually fight PlayStation as a console platform, they have deemed that it's completely almost useless. That they are gonna probably make more money just selling games everywhere and tapering out like a actual console thing. Maybe they strike gold somewhere, but they're effectively no longer trying to fight that. And now they're gonna go for description. This whole business move, purely from a business perspective, is insane. This is an admission of defeat at its absolute finest.
Really random out of nowhere advert. An advert that I do think reeks a bit of desperation because much of what they're promoting there, their mobile storefront isn't ready. They delayed it. Their cloud gaming initiative is just getting going. Their PC storefront is terrible and needs a lot of work. And they're stepping away from their console ecosystem, which is the strongest part of their community. At the same time as saying that all these games will leave Xbox, and I think devaluing the platform at the same time. Why are all these developers chasing the dollar bill? It's because all of them are saying the same thing. They all think that gaming is growing and that they have to do these certain aggressive moves to make gaming grow. Xbox thinks they have to knock down every barrier when it comes to platforms to make gaming grow. Companies like Warner Bros. Are looking at live service, thinking that's how gaming is going to grow for them. Let's invest instead of making another single-player superhero game. Why don't we get the live service bucks?
This is completely wrong. Companies are just currently looking at companies that are in on the open market. Okay, these companies don't like their money spiking like this, because next year's budget is going to account for this spike right here happening, this moving up to fast line, and that means some people are not going to get their bonuses, or it's going to be way harder to get their bonuses. All of these companies want one thing, and that is the line to be like this. Now, it currently seems flat, but if you look real hard, there is like this small bit of an upward movement slope. And that's exactly what they are all as one looking forward. Predictable revenue, returns, and growth. And that's why they're all looking in the direction of live services.
And do what Destiny's doing, but bring it to Suicide Squad. Or Bethesda Game Studios, which I think just represents a fall off in quality, but it also comes down to not learning the right lessons from your failures. All of us stumble in life. I am not perfect, and I'm not going to pretend that I have not messed up before. But what I think defines us in our greatest mistakes is how we respond to them. And I look at something like what Phil Spencer said after Starfield Shattered Space came out, where him and Todd were talking, and it was mentioned that the reason that Shattered Space may not have done well is because they didn't give players the buggy and instead gave it to them for free ahead of Shattered Space, and then it was missing a big key feature. That is the worst imaginable takeaway from what people were just stating is a low quality bar. Like, I know it's tough to take, and I know it's tough to hear, but that unfortunately is the case. Starfield Shattered Space was capable of much more and under-delivered on that. And that's much of what represents AAA gaming, is a failure to listen to feedback. Just look no further than Ubisoft. Ubisoft is a company we started covering a lot closer this year. And the reason being is their collapse was so fascinating, we had to talk about it. We've never seen anything quite like it. They're plummeting stock prices.
I'm sorry, did you talk about the collapse? Didn't you, like, praise some of this shit?
Their missed quality on launches with even big IP like Star Wars or Avatar. And you look at Assassin's Creed Shadows, which had such a bad pipeline internally that it was making historical inaccurate decision after historical inaccurate decision back to back to back, where it was almost tough to keep track of. They were getting sued. The main developers of the Mario and Rabbids series, which is like one of the best things Ubisoft has done, have left to go on and do their own things. AAA gaming is bleeding its best talent because they're chasing.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, the background music choice, I can't watch it anymore. It's just so cringe and bad. But yes, all these studios are completely failing. A lot of the things he's talking about is literally just folk nonsense. Assassin's Creed Shadows is literally gonna just fail because woke autism type of deals. Dragon Age Railguard has more wokeness in it than possible. Microsoft is pushing DEI like there's no tomorrow, and well, most of these other things are pretty much the same. Simple. Anyway, this was Squizzer Sits, and how was Mr. Matty Plays 10 out of 10? Bye.